Bernice Bottle came from Canoe River, Ontario, a Lac Seul First Nations community. She loved to cook and sew quilts. She was caring and helpful, her family says. She had a common law husband and 2 children. She moved to Winnipeg. The family remembers it would have been 1982 then, and they did not have regular weekly contact with her, and they don't know a lot about what her life was like there. And before you judge that at all, understand that Canada had one telephone provider then who charged excessive rates for calling long distance, even long distance within the same province, well, because they had the monopoly. She was found dead in an apartment in 1988. One of her siblings remembers that police told her that Bernice died from drinking rubbing alcohol, but another sibling would say she was murdered. It was unclear how or why Bernice died, or what the circumstances were in her last days. Family would say that the last they heard from police was when they were told about Bernice's death. They felt like police should have continued to investigate. Some answers might come if police shared their investigative file with the family members. However, given how often the deaths of Indigenous women were written off back then, it might not provide all of the answers. Given the age of the file and the apparent determination by police that it was an accidental death by poisoning, their file might have been purged a long time ago. This case, now almost 40 years old, shows the lack of clear communication at the very least that Indigenous folks experienced when getting answers for why their loved ones are gone. It was common, all too common, for authorities to see a quick phone call, maybe a letter to family as the end of their involvement. Today we'll talk about how to get hold of information in Canada based on Canada's current laws. Remember, though, that some files are purged after a certain amount of time, so not much may exist after decades have passed. The information may help someone, somewhere, get the answers that they need. It's always best to start with talking to the police directly or through victim services. They can often provide a lot of information without the need to go through a formal process. If that's not helpful, there are other places to get information and other ways to approach things. Every death in Canada is recorded by either a physician or a coroner. If the person is identified, an informant, who is usually a family member, will complete some of the information on a document that is usually called the Statement of Death. The Statement of Death and the information from the doctor or coroner then goes to the Vital Statistics Office and a death certificate is made. That can take a few months. If you have all the person's vital details, including information about their parents, the date of death, and the place of death, you can usually order the certificate online through government services. For more detailed information, or if you're missing a detail or two, you might have to pay a visit to a government service office, like Service Ontario, for example. Or you might have to write them a letter. Always look to the place where the person died and not where they were born for this kind of information. If there was an autopsy, the report can usually be obtained from the Chief Coroner's office. These usually cannot be obtained online, but call the Chief Coroner's office for your province or territory to see about the cost and how to have it sent to you. Sometimes the report will not be released, and this is usually when there is still an open investigation into the death. To obtain a police file, if it's not given voluntarily, you'll need to make a Freedom of Information request. Start with filling out whatever request form the police have. If that's denied, contact the Privacy Commissioner for your province or territory and use their form. Keep copies, because you might need them later if your request is still refused. If it's still denied, you can file an appeal through the Privacy Commissioner. Remember that if there is an open investigation, the police may legally refuse to give copies of the file. Even if their investigation is closed, they can redact or black out any information that is about another person to keep their information private. And always remember, it's unfortunate but true, that files that are older might be destroyed and no longer available. Personally, when it comes to a death or a missing person investigation, I think all of those files should be digitized and kept electronically. We have far too many families in Canada with far too many unresolved questions. Thank you for listening.